Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Effective Resume Writing Resume Strategies webinar. My name is Chris Miller. I am the WSU Global Campus Career Advisor. One second here. Thank you for joining tonight. Like I said, we're talking about resumes tonight. In terms of some of the housekeeping, I guess. If you have any questions at any point during the presentation, go ahead and put those into the chat box. I will probably get a head of steam and won't see them until the end. So just know that I will address them. I will go back and address those questions at the end. And right before the end, toward the end here, there will be a resume, kind of an activity for us. It won't be super interactive, but it's going to be turning the tables where we are going to be a mock company and we are going to post mock job posting. And we have 4 applicants that have made their way through the stringent applicant tracking software. And these resumes are on our desk, and we are going to decide which 1 or 2 candidates we want to bring in for an interview based on the resume and really the resume alone. So we'll get to that toward the end, but get started here. And thanks again for joining. Use the chat box if you have any questions. Okay. When I do these webinars, I start with this little glimpse of the career development process. I think this is a nice little snapshot. It's not perfect, but kind of gives one an idea of the different areas of the career development process that happens. Could happen many times throughout someone's life to start this process and end this process and bring it back up again at another time. It's a nice circle. I think that's telling. I think this is a process that happens back and forth over time. You don't always start in one area and move to the next. Sometimes you move backward, and it's kind of a process of growth and decay. But tonight we are pretty firmly in the yellow and orange sections here, knowing yourself and taking action. Obviously orange for taking action. Resume is one of the main job search tools, but also yellow because in order to produce an effective resume, one must really know themselves and know their strengths and skills and know their experiences and background and know how to put that on paper. So that's kind of where we are tonight. And some of the other webinar topics, career topics I'll address, at different times we'll hit on some of the other areas. So just a brief overview of resumes. We know what resumes are, but just what I think is interesting history is that it's obviously it comes from the French word resume, which means summary. And Leonardo da Vinci is credited as the person with the first resume. Well, that's likely untrue because he is a historical figure of note. He did something that was identified, I don't know at what point later on, but was identified as having as utilizing a very effective resume strategy. And that was that around the end of the 15th century, he was traveling around Europe and sending letters to the nobility of Europe in different areas. And these letters, he was looking for work, looking to get paid. And these letters really focused on the needs of the different nobility members. Focused less on his achievements and his experiences and more on finding out what those people needed, what problems that they needed solving. And so that was kind of where it was seen as the first resume. Someone who really had a well thought out a document, produced a document that really addressed and hit on the needs of someone else and helped trying to solve business. I'll say business problems to use more common vernacular, but business organizational problems and addressing it that way instead of just highlighting one's own achievements and experiences. So for the next 400 plus years, resumes were really more of a description, more like a letter, like his were, but not as focused on the needs of the others, not as well crafted and targeted, but more of a description of a person and their abilities and their past employment. Obviously, job references were a really important piece of the job search hundreds of years ago. And I mean, they still are now for sure, but just having those letters from former employers was often one of the only written documents that was given to an employer, prospective employer. And it continued like that, like I said, for many years until about the turn of the 20th century, until about halfway through. You know, it was still a formality, but you would see things on a resume that you wouldn't see today. You would see things like height and weight, and religious status, marital status. You know, things that would be illegal for an employer to ask in many circumstances on most of those items that I said. And it was really not until the 1950s that they had evolved and become more mandatory. And then, you know, in the 70s was the kind of the dawn or the beginning of the digital age. And resumes took a more professional look in terms of presentation and content like we would see today. The 1980s had more formalized background checks, the use of the fax machine for the job search on both the job seeker side and the employer side. You know, some job seekers would submit audio or videotape portfolios, so VHS portfolios or beta. And, you know, obviously now, as of 20 years ago, things are for the most part done online. Not always the case still, but for the vast majority of hiring situations, that is how it's done. And people utilize e-portfolios and build their own websites, use LinkedIn, and submit their resumes electronically. In terms of misconceptions, some of these are a little misleading, a little trickery on my part. That a resume is the first impression, and you know, there are instances where a resume is your first impression to an employer. A lot of companies, large companies, and you know, depending on the the setup of the organization, that is really your first impression. It's the first opportunity you have to introduce yourself by submitting a resume and a job application. But ideally, it's not. You know, ideally, you've had some kind of networking contact beforehand, be it through, I don't know, informational interviews or something like that, connecting on LinkedIn. You know, maybe a bridge contact person, someone you know has let an employer know that you're looking for work, has introduced you perhaps, and you've had that opportunity to get your name in front of the decision maker before they even have a chance to see your resume. And that's ideal. Another misconception is that every job should be listed. And you know, that's a nice thing about LinkedIn or having an e-portfolio. You can really have one that doesn't have the same spatial restrictions as a resume. You can list every job if you want to, but really you want to focus on listing relevant work. And there are ways you can list more work that's irrelevant and just not put as much detail into it on a resume. But the idea is that you really want to have a tailored strategic resume that has a clear theme. And I'll talk about that in a little bit too. One page for every 10 years of experience was kind of an old industry rule that doesn't really apply anymore today. And I'll talk about with some general resume pointers how you could better think about that. And that it's the most important piece of your job search. And it's obviously a very important piece of your job search, but you as a person are the most valuable part of your job search, not this piece of I always say piece of paper still, but I'll say not this electronic file that you submit. In terms of some general resume pointers, when I'm doing a resume review, so if you are a global campus student and you're interested in having your resume reviewed, you can send me an email to do that, and I'll have my contact information at the end. But my email address is cmiller66@wsu.edu if you're interested in setting up a resume review. But these are some general pointers I will go over just to give a baseline. So someone will have an idea of where I may or may not be coming from with some of the comments that I may make. But leading in refers to two different things. Firstly, it refers to the top 1/3 physical section of your resume. That is that when the employer or HR person or decision maker, whoever it is, pulls up your resume, uploads it, that top 1/3 section is the thing that they see first. So in terms of first impressions of your resume, that's definitely that. And so that's the area where you should really think about organizing things strategically in order to really meet the needs of that organization based on a job posting or some different criteria. And I will talk about some tools to use later on in order to do that. But also leading in refers to each section of your resume, what that first line is, what that first bullet point is. Is that the one that really speaks best to your qualifications, the ones that they're addressing in a job posting when they're listing those requirements, those preferred and desired requirements? How are you organizing those? And again, there's another tool that I'll recommend you use in order to do that. But really thinking about, the skill section, which skill am I listing first? Work experience, what's that first bullet point? How am I organizing that? I guess I'll just jump over for that example for it says professional summary. Ideally, you'll have a professional summary section. I'd say most job seekers could use one effectively. How are you tailoring that? What's the first line of your professional summary? But onto that second one, data. It's really helpful to see numbers on a resume to quantify your experience. And I'll leave that for now because I will talk about that again, address that down the line. The length of your resume versus that old industry rule of 1 page for every 10 years. The point of this is really knowing your audience and thinking about where you're submitting this resume to. Are you using something like Indeed, which is a mega job posting board that's open to the public consumption, and a company might likely be getting hundreds of applicants, and they'll be using applicant tracking software to filter resumes through before a resume even gets in front of a person's eyes. If that's the case, you likely want to err on the side of brevity and having a shorter resume versus, let's say, a federal job application. If you are applying for a federal job on USA Jobs and you're submitting a resume, they want as much novel information that's relevant that you can provide. So they will happily take a 5-page plus resume if it's not repetitive information over and over again. If it's all information that is relevant to what that job is, that really highlights your skills and experiences. So knowing your audience being the point there. Font size, ideally between 10 to 12 point, is the most legible and gentle on the eyes for the reader. It should be easy to scan through, a lot of these different bullet points. You can use bolded, underlined, and italicized text to help things stand out, to make it easy to scan. You want to be consistent in how you list things in terms of just general format, but also verb tense usage, dates listed in reverse chronological order. You want to avoid repetition on a resume. You want to not list an objective. Objectives are outdated, and I think most people do avoid those nowadays. But I do recommend a professional summary for most people. And there are different ways to do a professional summary. I really just recommend looking at different examples online and finding one that you think fits well for your experiences. Sometimes it's kind of like an elevator pitch blurb at top and then a skill section beneath. Sometimes it's just that blurb with a different skill section or just skills listed throughout within the work experience or the different sections of the resume. I kind of mentioned dates and locations, so dates reverse chronologically. Remembering locations, sometimes I'll look at resumes and you got to really remember the audience. Are you submitting it in the same geographical area you live in? Will they automatically know where that company is and what that company does? Ideally, a resume will have a clear theme based on work experience, but for someone who is a career changer or a new graduate who's looking at entry-level work, you can build a theme based on transferable skills and experiences through like a functional resume format. So you can look at functional resumes if that's the case. A resume header with your name standing apart from the contact info and the certain things that you need there. So your name, your phone number, your email address, and also a LinkedIn URL or personal website or ePortfolio link, whatever it is, something that links. Ideally, if you don't, for most people, it's LinkedIn, and so that's really the easiest way. General in terms of a general pointer is having that LinkedIn URL that's been tailored and snipped all the random letters and numbers off of with that contact info. I still like city and state, but you don't need physical address. You don't need physical, actual street address or anything like that. If you have the option of submitting your resume in a given format and they're not asking for a specific one, PDF format usually has the least amount of issues on the uploading side. And then who should review your resume? I'm here for global campus students to give feedback. But my background is in education for the most part, counseling, psychology to some extent. And those are, the content reviews. I can give the better content reviews there. And I'll be hitting on general effective resume writing strategies, but having someone who knows the company or industry, or the specific job title that you're going after, having them giving you a content review, if you can find someone, through mentoring, through LinkedIn, through maybe the alumni association, if you can have someone who knows that area give you a content review, you get higher quality feedback just knowing that. But there are ways that I will discuss finding content areas to hit on a resume if you're unsure. So in terms of helping you develop resume content, what are some of the tools that are available to you? Some of the resources I wanted to highlight are the WSU Resume Packet, Resume Worded, the Occupational Outlook, and informational interviews. I guess I can just do informational interviews briefly before I share my screen and show you the resume packet. Just if you are, like I said, if you are networking and exploring career areas and connecting with professionals who are doing the types of work that you're interested in pursuing, having them, like I said, look at your resume, having them giving you ideas of resume content, places that you could generate resume content, that would be really helpful. So that's one of the things people do when they're doing an informational interview. They'll say, what are some of the things I should focus on in my resume for this given job area, whatever it may be. But also in terms of developing resume content, I want to show you the WSU Resume Packet, Resume Worded, and the Occupational Outlook Handbook. So bear with me while I jump over here and share my screen. And I'm going to start here at ascc.wsu.edu. This is the Academic Success and Career Center for the main campus. But even if you're a global campus student, any campus student that already has years of work experience, there's still a lot of good resources here that's helpful for people at most stages of the career development process. So if you look at this top menu here, and you go over to building career skills, drop down to create a resume cover letter and click on that. You can either scroll all the way down or click on this this banner bar here. I'll click on featured resources, resume and cover letter guide here, and resume examples and resume worded. Resume examples, if you want to see suggested designs for specific academic areas. And there are, a handful. There aren't like 30 different majors in there, but there are a handful of ones to look at to see different styles for given academic majors. You could look at that. Resume and cover letter guide, click on that. It would take you to this PDF. And just to give you an idea of a few things to highlight here, it'll talk about general elements of a resume, how to write effective bullet points, but really it breaks it down even further here and generating a list of your skills and experience. And this is really about writing effective resume content and using the CAR approach, context, actions, and results. I guess challenge or context, approach or actions and results. I always think of it as context, actions, and results, but considering the problems you faced in a given role, your unique contributions, and the benefits that you have imparted. So some questions that help you that you can ask yourself as you're trying to brainstorm some resume material. What did you do that was faster, better, less expensive? Just going to jump around. Identified or helped solve problems, reorganized or improved existing system, achieved results with little or no supervision required, training another person, things like that. It talks about important aspects of resume writing in terms of not writing in full first person sentences and leading off with action verbs, and some examples that you can borrow too, which is nice. And I really like this action verb list that helps avoid repetition in a resume. This helps with the brainstorming of content. Some non-technical competencies that the National Association of Colleges Employers has identified that employers are looking for in college grads, and how you can kind of word that on a resume for these different areas. And then jumping back over to resume worded, if you click on that, I won't be able to go all the way into it because it does store some of that information, but essentially it is a comparing and contrasting tool. So you would copy and paste in a job posting, and then you copy and paste in your resume. And so it's going to scan both and kind of show you what the job posting is focusing on, and show you how well your resume is addressing those. And so this is that tool that you can use to really think about leading in how you're tailoring a professional summary, how you are tailoring each section, a skill section, work experience, which bullet points are you leading with? What are the first, 3 or 4, whatever it may be. You're using resume worded to show you this is specifically what they keep addressing in that job posting. And these are the things that you should do with your resume and how well you are already doing them, and ideas to help you improve your resume. So resume worded is a really cool tool that I highly recommend. And then the Occupational Outlook Handbook is a career researching tool. We also, before I go there, let me just jump back. Under any of these areas and on building career skills that you would go to on ASCC, there's a Labor Market Insights, which is another career researching tool like Occupational Outlook Handbook. And you can do the same thing with it to select industry, occupation, state and county information about a given career, to pull out some skills for that career that employers are looking for and the employers who are hiring. So that's a really cool tool there, Labor Market Insights. But I was just going to highlight Occupational Outlook Handbook here, just because it's a little bit more robust in presentation. So this is bls.gov/OOH. This is housed at the Bureau of Labor Statistics, and it's a career research and forecasting tool that helps you research different careers, different occupations, and what the outlook is over the next about 10 years for a given one. So I will go ahead and show off. I will just refresh the screen until I see something that jumps out at me that might be relevant to a global campus student. And if not, then I will just hit the A through Z index. Let's do broadcast sound and video technician. Sounds interesting. So you can just do a search in the search bar. There's the A through Z index on the homepage. There's job clustering that you can look at, but just to give you an idea of how this tool works, this first page is going to summarize all the other tabs, but I'm going to jump to the next one here. When you see this banner, not really banner, see these tabs, this horizontal tab layout here, what they do. So what do these broadcast sound and video text do? So some of the duties of these. So this is resume information right here that you can pull. They operate, monitor, and adjust audio, video, sound, lighting, and broadcast equipment to ensure consistent quality, and all these, so on and so forth. And then they're going to break it up for this one because this is more of a clustered area. Audio and video text versus broadcast text versus lighting text versus sound engineering text. Another place within here is under how to become one. So for a given job, we'll talk about what kind of education, licensure, certifications required to get into a given career area. And this part is going to have important qualities at the bottom. So communication skills. So obviously, a lot of resumes are going to say for a number of different jobs and industries, I have communication skills. But what does that mean for this specific cluster? Technicians need to communicate with supervisors and workers to ensure that clients' needs are met, that equipment is set up properly before broadcasts, live performances, and presentations. So it's providing some context to those specific skills required for the job. So that's a nice way to get some resume content also. So that's out of the how to become one. What is the pay for this career? And it's going to break it into different areas. And then job outlook, that's how this tool gets its name. It is projected to grow 10% from 2021 to 2031, which is faster than the average for all occupations. So it suggests that this is an area of secure employment that over at least the next decade, job opportunities will be available, maybe not necessarily in your geographical location, but throughout the United States. There is state and area data also. Similar occupations is a nice tab because if you find something that you're interested in, but it doesn't pay enough, or maybe there's a lot of education required that you don't really, that's not really something you're interested in pursuing, you can explore some other related areas. And then under more information, this is an often overlooked tab, but this is a really great resource for research, just for general career knowledge, but also networking. So, for someone who's interested in this, they can explore the National Association of Broadcasters and hopefully connect with some people that are working in broadcasting, and they can maybe set up informational interviews, maybe get their resume looked at just to get some tips about how they can prepare to enter that given career field. So that is the Occupational Outlook Handbook. Let me jump back over. Some other things to think about when you're developing resume content. There's something called the ethos method, which is if the more if the more simple and direct approach of the CAR method, the context, action, results method doesn't work. And for some people, honestly, having more areas to think about does help. I just think it's more interesting that I'm providing two different methods that are attempting to do the same thing, and one is longer than the other. But looking at your general work experience, what kind of tasks were required? How did you do the things that are required for that job? So that one's more behavioral based. What were some of the outcomes of the work that you did, and what are some of the skills that you developed? Some of the questions you want to ask yourself when developing resume content: did you deal with money? Did you work with customers? Were you involved with decision making? And then were you in charge of supervision in any capacity in that role? And like I mentioned before, having data on your resume is super important. When you can have numbers on there, percentages, number ranges, it really helps sell your experiences, and eyes are just drawn to numbers. So it's a really effective resume strategy. You can think about the quantity of your work, just basic quantifying your experience, quality of your work, the impact of your work, and the scope of the work environment. Some common resume mistakes. These are just for some of these are more just, flipping the script, kind of opposite of what those pointers were, but, not having a LinkedIn or ePortfolio or website page linked with your contact information, I should say listed with your contact info. Not having a tailored lead-in for a given section of your resume. If you're using a professional summary section, not having that tailored. Listing an objective, if you're doing that at all, it's outdated. Having it too long or too short, again, knowing your audience. Lacking an appropriate format. There really aren't, there's no right or wrong way in most instances to have a resume format. I would say for some maybe jobs industries, there could be a format to follow, but just for general effective resume writing purposes, just having a format that isn't well organized, I think, is the biggest point there. Writing full first person sentences, having typos in your resume, only listing duties instead of mixing in skills and accomplishments, And then having a reference section at the end. You don't need to have a reference section. If they ask for references with the application, you can have a separate reference page. But in most cases, you're going to wait to submit those references until after you've had an interview. Cover letters, just to briefly touch upon those. That is part of the resume packet too, that I can jump over to, but addressing it to a specific person at a company when you can, and not just saying to whom it may concern. You're introducing yourself, referencing the position and the source, how you found out about that job opening. Elaborating on your qualifications by specifically addressing things from the job posting. So not being repetitive from the resume, but really expanding or expounding upon some given experience that really hits on something from that job posting. If there is no job posting, if you're submitting resumes to people or organizations without a job posting, gathering that information from networking, from websites, from the Occupational Outlook Handbook or Labor Market Insights, requesting a meeting at the end, and then thanking them for their time and consideration. So let me just jump over to that packet just so we can see what it says there for cover letters. I don't want to underplay a cover letter, because a lot of times after you spend a lot of time working on a resume, and it's something you're still going to want to tailor for a given application, but you're writing a cover letter is just an extra thing you have to do that a lot of people find to be just to be straining, I guess. But this really is another opportunity for you to expand on your experience, and another opportunity to kind of sell your experience and your skills to the employer. So they can be seen as like a basic tool to use, but it's also that extra opportunity to really explain something in more detail. Sometimes it's a segue into an interview conversation where they say, "Oh, I saw you wrote about this in your cover letter. Can you tell us more about it?" I've heard of that happening many times. So, like I said in the intro, it's what is your intent writing it? How did you learn about it? What position are you applying for? Really basic, but the second part is really the meat and potatoes of it. So what are your qualifications? Why do you want to work there? What should you enjoy doing for them? And really try to make those connections between your experience and the job listing. And the third one, like I said, pretty basic, following up, saying thank you for their time, and hoping to connect in the future. And then there's just a sample there at the end. So that's the cover letter. In terms of our resume activity, we are going to review a job posting for our company that we all work at and we all know well, called ProLab. And we are a worldwide provider of telecommunications, computer, and hair care products, as you all know. 3 classic things that go well together. We're going to review the applicants. And then, as you're looking at these resumes, you can think to yourself, which one do you feel is the best fit? Why do you think some resumes are more effective than others? Are there any red flags? And who would you bring into interview if you could choose 1 or 2? So let me bring that up. And for this, don't pay attention to the dates. I blacked out the dates. Some of this is outdated, and I don't have the original file on all these, so I'm working with what I got here. But as you all know so well, as we all work at ProLab, and we've been a little bit behind because we need this marketing assistant to help us. You all know the company fairly well, so we can really just jump into the essential responsibilities of this marketing assistant. But coordinating project initiatives in support of major product marketing programs. We're so busy looking and overwhelmed, and we need this marketing assistant so badly that we have spelling errors and typos in our own job posting. So unprofessional of us. We're assessing current product opportunities, and determining the viability and maintenance of product categories. That's what we're looking for, in this role. Collaborating with the sales force on new products and new product features and benefits. We want someone to coordinate copy development, so someone ideally who has experience writing copy. Assembling and assessing category and brand review data, so someone with specific data analytics would be nice. monitoring marketing budgets monthly and working with senior marketing execs on that. We don't need to worry about the other responsibilities and who they report to right now, but what are we requiring of this position? A bachelor's degree in marketing or related field or equivalent experience with a minimum 1 year marketing experience in business environment. As you all know, this is close to an entry level position. We're going to list a minimum of 1 year marketing experience, but we'll take someone who just has internship experience, even if it's less than a year. Ideally, they will have that marketing degree, but we'll accept something similar. Some skills in any of the areas listed here: product management, brand management, PR, journalism, advertising, sales, and product development. Possessing strong communication skills, obviously, for marketing. Effective conflict resolution skills while maintaining the ability to challenge thoughts and ideas. Strong execution skills and being detail oriented. Strong analytical and project management skills, ability to multitask, work in a fast-paced environment, proficient with MS Office, and self-driven. So you all know what we're looking for in our marketing assistant. We got these resumes here. Let's look at them. First, we have Farley. These are these people that don't exist in the real world, but for us, we can't wait to meet them. Well, we can't wait to interview whoever we feel is the right 1 or 2 candidates for this job. Okay, so what are we seeing with these resumes here? Farley Suber. Farley is objective. He has an objective, seeking an entry-level position in sales or marketing. So Farley didn't take the time to tailor their objective to this position. You would want to just say marketing if you're going to use an objective, and also list the company. He didn't list his email address with the contact info. That's unfortunate. It's not the way things are done. Let's see, education, Bachelor of Arts in Communication and PR. That is not marketing, but it's related. And everything's good there. So I know since he's leading with education, he likely doesn't have a lot of marketing experience, but looks like that's not necessarily the case. Sales and marketing rep for Lawns Computing Systems. He didn't put a location, so we either some of us know where that is or none of us do. I'm not sure. It would have been helpful for Farley to list that location there. The first one thing I see is applied marketing skills to increase sales of Macintosh G3 computers, which we all still use and love to this day, which is good for, to address the marketing skills being utilized. But there's, when you're hitting on something like that, there's no data there. Like, how much was that increase in sales? I could really use that information. Would be really helpful. Cultivated client relationships. Okay, that's good. Place advertising in magazines. Wrote press releases. So we have some writing experience there, not necessarily writing copy, but placing ads and writing press releases is definitely related. A marketing assistant at the Broadway Masters Theater. Again, don't know where. Still not seeing a lot of data, but tracked attendance based on information from the box office attendance. So there is some data work being done. We just don't have those numbers. Honors and interests. Senior QM average of 4 out of 4 for his last year. I mean, for their last year, that's good. I'd probably lead with the award below it, the award for academic achievement excellence in communications. That might be the thing that I actually lead with. As a golfer and also fraternity chairman. Okay, so that's Farley. We also have Gabriel Medina. Has contact info. No LinkedIn for either of them. It would be nice to have that information. We don't have it, but at least Gabriel has an email address for us here. Listed an objective, but really that's a summary section there with that. Doesn't actually list an objective. It's just discussing more about their experience here. But okay, specialized experience in wireless communications, sales. So this is sales experience, which is one of the areas, but of all the things we were interested in, marketing was number 1 and sales was one of the areas where it's nice for them to have experience in, but we don't need someone who's fully coming to us with a sales background. So I'm not so sure at the outset. Dedicated to achieving sales targets. Would like to know some information about those. We'll see if there is some. Retail sales specialists, so sales and telecommunications. We are telecommunications and hair care, and as we all know, the third thing, computing. So that's great. Based on customer requirements, deliver sales presentation. So there's some data here, so that's great. Met or surpassed sales expectations each month for 2 consecutive years. That's great. 127 quota, great, and excellent ranking. 900 plus customers. So that's all good information. Bachelor's degree in marketing. So they have the right education we're looking for and sales experience, but not a lot of marketing experience that I'm seeing. I see the MS Office experience is one of the things we listed specifically, but that's not one that they're expert level in. Language section is unnecessary for having listed this in the States with our company here. If it was a different language, it would be more appropriate. Additional info. High energy sales professional with proven track record of sales. It does seem to support that with the resume info. With telecommunications. So support tools and no ending. Just, I don't know if we didn't get the second page for Gabriel or not, but it's the additional information section. I think they just forgot to finish that off, which is unfortunate. So now we move on to Miranda Hess. Objective, a junior marketing position. That is short and sweet. It doesn't say the company here that Miranda really wants to work for ProLab where we work. That would have been nice to have. No, a professional summary would be better. You got the email, no LinkedIn there. It's unfortunate. No e-portfolio. But international business and marketing major, that's cool. I don't know if that's a dual degree or a double major or that's a cohesive major, but that's interesting. That's something I would want to ask them about. We have marketing internship experience for college, but only 3 little bullet points for it. And this looks like a really blank resume in general, which is unfortunate. Could you really use some data there and some stronger resume language? Worked with advertisers on sales of insert programs, updated computer reports. Okay. Planned and provided educational, cultural, and social programs. That's cool. Let's see. Anything else here I'm seeing? It's just empty. It's clean looking, but it's empty. Some sales experience, but really just not a lot listed here. They really spread out the computer skills with MS Office just to take up space. Fluent in German, that's cool. And I'm a big hockey fan, so Miranda has the right education. She has some marketing experience, and Miranda likes ice hockey. So while it's a weak resume, one of the things that happens, given my personal interest in ice hockey, it's weird to list ice hockey. I would just list hockey, but maybe it's someone I would want to bring into interview. Who knows? But also Richard Anderson here is the last person we have. Let's see, Richard doesn't have an email address listed either. It's too bad. To obtain a marketing position in a corporation, a little bit better than the last one, but again, why not list ProLab where you're applying to? Education, bachelor's of business administration and marketing, so that's great. Running with honors and activities first instead of work experience or education makes me think this person doesn't have a lot of relevant work experience. What we got? Honor roll, we got all good stuff listed here. There's a spelling error with associated student body. Might want to break that into 2 columns if I were Richard Anderson. So what do we have here? Designed and scheduled advertisements. So we have some ad work, created seasonal product displays. Okay, so there's some marketing experience here. Recorded and filed all accounting paperwork. It's just not spelled out very well in terms of hitting the marketing aspect. Proposed travel expense budget, etc. Let's see. Yeah, just there's no data here, which is too bad. And then volunteer experience here, which is nice to see. Can see a lot of that from the other ones. Computer skill, this section's listed in a sloppy manner with the spacing. That This doesn't look great. And then references are listed. We don't need references yet. We want to just have our interview first. So I don't know who you're thinking about, but there are some good candidates here. Some have that marketing experience. Some have the better direct education match. I don't know. I don't know who I would bring in. I would definitely. There are a couple to consider. Nobody has a perfect resume. I think that's what you would see in most cases. Well, not in all cases, but in many cases with an applicant pool, um, you're going to be maybe picking and choosing. But hopefully, you're seeing some of the things that might be going on in an employer's head as they're looking at resumes, and hopefully, you had some of those thoughts too as you were looking at it. Jumping back over, I think that should about bring us to the end there. It does. So thank you so much for joining and exploring some effective resume writing strategies with me tonight. Again, my email address is cmiller66@wsu.edu if you are a global campus student interested in a resume review. And it's the easiest way to get in touch with me. There's the career support website directly where you can go to start the process, or the easiest way is really just send me an email. And then the WSU Career Guide blog, also on our website, is where I post. I try to post weekly about career happenings for global campus students. So virtual events, webinars, virtual employer information sessions, virtual career and education fairs. Check out the WSU Career Guide blog and subscribe to that to get those updates when I post them. Again, thank you so much for joining. I will jump in the chat box now to see if there are any questions. And if not, have a great night. Okay, for some of these questions I'm seeing here, Zoom verification for attendance, you can email global.connections. I'll put it in the chat box here. global.connections@wsu.edu. That's for that attendance verification for any amplifier program or other reasons. In terms of campuses that can get resume reviews, it's definitely a service that's available at all WSU campuses. So just connect with your campus career center. So I would be the one doing it for global campus students, and each campus career center will have people for resume reviews also. All right. And that is all I see. So I'll stick around for another couple of minutes. But again, thank you so much for attending, and have a good one. Take care.